Hello and welcome to Revolutions Per Movie. This week, we continue our talk with filmmaker and musician Dave Markey on Devo's The Men Who Make the Music. Last week, we stopped at the absurd talk of bands that were trying to cash in on Devo's 1980 Whip It sound. So, let's start there. Enjoy! Were there any bands that tried to ape Devo's sound or energy that you think succeeded?
There were a couple things that K-Rock would play. I don't even remember the names of the artists, but there were some bands that were clearly trying for that freedom of choice sound. I wish I could remember the name of the band, but their song was called UFO. It's a UFO. Oh, have you ever heard the Village People album? Oh God, what's it called?
Is it a later one?
Yeah,
No.
it's this crazy 1980, 81 Village People album where they try to re-image themselves. And on the album cover art, they look like they're trying to be Spandau Ballet meets
Wow.
Duran Duran or Steve. They were like totally new romantic relook.
Wow.
But the music is totally Devo. Listen to the song Food Fight.
Okay.
Or Big Mac. It's a train wreck of a record.
I'm going to put Food Fight. I'm going to play Food Fight right here. But yeah, that photo you're talking about, that is amazing. It was such a weird time because...
You never heard this record? You never heard of it? Well, of course, it failed miserably. It didn't work. It was like pretty much the death knell of the Village People's career.
Right.
Neil Young's new wave album didn't work. It just didn't work when all these artists tried to try on this new dress, and a lot of hilarious things ensued, especially the Village People Food Fight, also in their song Big Mac. It sounds like they're doing Devo, but they're trying to look like Spandau Ballet and Steve Strange.
They're good-looking guys, you know. They gotta have the hair right. But when did you stop listening to Devo? When did you feel like this isn't speaking to me anymore in terms of their output?
I never stopped listening to Devo. In fact, when I kind of got into hardcore and all that, mm-hmm. I joined a band, formed a band, really. And my first thing was like, yeah, we got to do a Devo cover. And we covered Uncontrollable Urge. So even during hardcore, I was still flying the Devo flag high.
Me too.
And I didn't lose it. I mean, to me, the band after the fourth album, I became a little maybe less interested in.
Yeah.
And then I seeked out their music, their unreleased music, where
yeah, that's amazing.
Through tape trading and so forth, I got all that stuff that would be later released as Hardcore Devo or whatnot. There was a couple bootlegs that were pretty well distributed.
Yes, there were.
I think one of them was called Men Who Make the Music, actually. And it had a lot of that. It had a lot of that early stuff on it that would be later re-released as Hardcore Devo or whatnot.
Yeah.
And then once I heard that stuff, I'm like, okay, that's even more next level than the stuff they did in their basement.
Oh my God, it's upsetting. Chango and things like that.
Yeah. It's incredible.
I go down the river with my laser beam.
I'm a tater tot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm so damn mad. Yeah.
I was also in a Devo cover band with Sam Coombs from Quasi and Elliott Smith and my brother.
Oh, wow.
And we were fanatical. Because I knew I was like, Elliot, you got to move this way, and then you got to pivot with that foot. We had costume changes and everything. So it never left me either. I think Oh No, It's Devo was the last album I kind of liked. By the time Shout came out, it was all sequencers, and Alan Myers, who's such an amazing drummer, was really
Right.
put out to pasture. It was all, they were
He
super
was.
into drum machines and sequencers.
But the music video they did for
Experienced.
the Hendrix cover, "Are You Experienced," was quite good.
It's incredible, and that's
Quite
the
good.
best thing on the record. If they had kind of embraced a sound like that was kind of heavy and kind of had
Right.
like some hip hop production on it, like really heavy beats on it and distorted beats. It was that I thought was really successful.
Interesting to note, you're talking about being up there in the Pacific Northwest and having a Devo cover band. You know, when I met Kurt Cobain, somehow maybe Devo came up. You know, we sort of bonded on this Devo thing, and then like a few years later, they would release a compilation record where they covered the B side to "Whip It,"
Yeah, Turnaround.
which is a real obscure Jerry song, and someone like Cobain picking up on that. It goes to show you that there was real heavy influential thing that went on there. And while most of it really kind of maybe went under the radar, or in the case of artists trying to adopt their sound, leading to complete commercial disasters for artists like Neil Young and the Village People, it still was all a part of this influence that was going on with Devo. And if you got it, you got it. And once you got it, that was it. You were kind of infected.
That's a good way to put it. Also, you could find their records in like drugstores because they were on Warner Brothers. They had amazing distribution. I used to like buy a lot of my records at a drugstore. It was like one of the few places I could get them. And they didn't know what they were bringing in. They're like Kiss, Devo, Cheap Trick, Donna Summer. It was just like, we're just
Right.
picking it out. We don't have no idea. And so I think for a lot of people, it was the first accessible way to find something like this. The Satisfaction video.
Right. We're only on the Satisfaction video.
That Satisfaction video seen like Spazz Attack in it. Did you ever see him around? Did you ever meet Spazz Attack?
Early on in the LA punk scene, it's 76, 77, I would have been all of 12 and 13.
Right.
And I did not get up to Hollywood. I was too young.
Okay.
At the same time, I wasn't going to rock concerts. I wasn't going to go see Queen or Pink Floyd or Led Zeppelin, although I would have loved to, but I just couldn't get to it. I didn't have any older siblings. I didn't have any
neither.
friends that drove. I didn't have any way to get there. Until, you know, I got involved in the LA punk hardcore scene, which at that point I was 16 and I had friends that drove, and we could go up to the Whiskey A Go Go or the Starwood where Devo played an awful lot in 77, 78, 79, which is a club that I live across. Well, it's no longer there. It's been torn down.
Okay.
And it's now a strip mall, but I've lived across the street from that now for 31 years.
What was like one of the first Starwood or underground shows that you got to see when you were that age?
Well, I went from Devo being my first real concert to seeing the Dickies, or maybe it was the Go-Go's at the Whiskey A Go Go in a club setting, which is a totally different environment than seeing a show at the Santa Monica Civic, which, you know, at the time, even though a place like the Civic's only 2,000, 2,500, maybe 3,000 capacity, to me as a child, that was massive. That was just huge. And, you know, really not a huge venue like the Forum or whatnot, other big places in town. The first club shows I saw would have been like, Dickies, Go-Go's, Oingo Boingo, the Cramps, the Gun Club.
Amazing. Yeah.
So many shows. In 1981, when I go back, I still have ticket stubs that I saved, and I just look at them and, like, you know, it's got the price on them, and it's like, $4.50.
Yeah.
You're seeing the circle jerks, the whiskey, or seeing the Dead Kennedys in the flipper at the whiskey. And half the time I didn't even pay to get in. I would just sneak in the back door, or I would go early on and hide out in the bathroom. I remember Wall of Voodoo was playing, and I had just gotten their first EP that was released, and I
Oh,
was
so good.
obsessed.
So good.
And I went down, so I was, didn't have any money, living, taking the bus up from Santa Monica and into West Hollywood to go catch, Wall of Voodoo sound check, and then hiding out in the bathroom till showtime, which I did. And yeah,
So those were all ages venues, the Starwood and things like that?
Starwood was, the whiskey was, yes,
Okay.
those were all ages
I didn't know
venues.
that.
And yeah, I mean, I was years away from being 21 at that point.
Right. Yeah.
So
That's kind of amazing that LA had still that going.
there was an amazing club scene here in that era, and there was so many bands, and bands that managed to sort of stay together from the original LA punk wave, like that were still in business, like the Alley Cats and the Plugs, and some of these bands I got to see. But I did see them a few years previously because I was too young, but I saw most of them.
Did you make it to New Wave Theater at all? To
Oh yeah,
Peter Ivor's show?
I was at some filmings of New Wave Theater.
Oh my God, what was that like?
It was weird, and I remember it was at this place called the Florentine Gardens, which
Okay.
was they had lots of shows there, like Dead Kennedys had played shows there,
Okay.
and so forth. 999 and the Circle Jerks. But like I remember going, I think I watched in one night Social Distortion and the Circle Jerks and Fear being
Wow.
filmed for that show. Of course, these were all bands that I was seeing at the time,
Right.
in even much more smaller venues.
And so what year
Yeah.
did the We Got Power compilations come out then?
The only one that we were involved with was the first one.
Okay.
Harder to Go Home, and that would have been 1982 or 83.
That was a totally essential compilation.
That was sourced from the fanzine that we were doing. We Got Power. We had bands send in their tapes, and I sequenced that record. I put it together.
It's phenomenal. That was a really big deal for someone like me.
Amongst hardcore compilations, though, that record really stands out as
Totally.
something else. It's different. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot weirder. It's got a lot more varied music.
Totally.
It's got the Minutemen on it and the Big Boys, and it's not just thrash, but it's also got weird things like the Romulans, which is very Devo sounding. Bands like the Nip Drivers, and
Love them.
Dayglow Abortions, and the
Yep.
Red Cross, of course.
Yeah, it was definitely, this wasn't like a maximum rock and roll comp. This was like something else.
It had a fair amount of thrash on it.
Yeah, but I mean, like, again, the Minutemen were just, again, another band that like just totally changed my DNA.
Right. We're talking something special. We're not talking about Devo anymore.
Well, I know. Well, okay, so Satisfaction.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to talk about. I mean,
Satisfaction. We're back to Satisfaction.
Satisfaction.
Where does this stand in terms of like favorite videos or moments?
The Satisfaction video is pretty classic. It's great. It just has, again, General Boy is in it. Mark's dad is in it. And like, there's a shot I just always remember where he's like in the back seat of a car with a girl, and he's trying to make out with her, and the dad turns around and just like, no, like stuff like that. Like, when you're a kid and you're hitting puberty, really good timing on
Yes.
that. Being a bit younger, being maybe the next generation younger down from Jerry and Mark, being 10, 15 years younger,
Right.
Being 14 years old when that first got exposed to me, just wow,
Yeah, because there's sexual frustration in it.
Mhm.
Like everyone's trying to like make out, and the parents are basically busting them in a classic rock and roll fashion. But then counterpoints with Boogie Boy in a playpen with a toaster and a fork.
That is one of the most memorable images that they created.
Absolutely.
In a sense, because it's just like, I think that's the thing that most people remembered seeing if they happened to catch those films at the concert. Like, yeah, you know, he sticks a fork in a toaster and fries
himself. Yeah, has a seizure, an electrical seizure in the playpen
during a part of the song where the song is just going, you know, bonkers.
And if you don't know what Boogie Boy is yet, right? If this is your introduction to this character all of a sudden, this adult stuffed baby in this thing, it's really a hard thing to take because you're like, what's going on here? What's going on? It's just full of amazingly sophisticated and upsetting imagery.
It was a little prior to my experimentation with psychedelics, Devo was, but like clearly so much of their stuff was informed by psychedelia, I think.
I've never thought about that. What do you mean?
I mean, just in a way, I don't know. Like,
no, I'm interested.
I remember the first time I took acid, I just kept listening to Shrivel Up over and over again, and just the sounds in it. It sounded like the auditory hallucinations one experiences under the influence of LSD. And God, Digging Out for the Future just sounded amazing.
Yeah, that was Ken Scott who did all that Bowie stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh yeah, the production on the record is just notably like stepped up for sure. I like, you know, all those early records equally. They're all great in their own way.
Yes. They're all different too.
They're different.
Yeah.
Like, here's a band that's evolving, and they continue to evolve as they're devolving. So
yes,
go figure.
When you were young and you were hearing about Devolution, what did that mean to you? What did you think about that? Because it's kind of a concept that's ramped up now in terms of truth.
You know, they were right about everything. And of course, when I was super young, I didn't fully, I understood it. They just, you know, I understood that their whole thing was just like mankind has gone as far as it possibly can go. And now we're regressing. We're going backwards. Something like Mike Judge's film Idiocracy, where it comes out a decade and a half before Trump. And it's just like, you know, we're dealing with someone that was a seer that could see the future. Devo are seers. Devo could see the future. And sadly, they were right about all of it.
Yeah, that's why I'm kind of amazed that they even cracked through in any capacity in terms of, like, they're this weird art film collective that broke onto Warner Brothers with costumes and films and theatricality and, you know, weird ideas about culture and having their own fan club that was so different. They never, even in their interviews, were always really on point and really kind of wanted to educate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it'd be really easy for David Letterman to kind of make fun of what they were wearing, but they would kind of stand their ground and be like, no, this is what this is for, and this is who we are.
Right. It was intellectual behind all the kind of cheap gags and things. There was real ideas that were there that were undisputable that formed their base. But at the same time, they always had a sense of humor about it. I mean, they had a sense of humor about the end of the world. And, you know, I think that's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah, even in their early art they were making in college, it was definitely like they were making like pamphlets about this stuff. I think they had a book called My Struggle that was a Boogie Boy, you know, with like collage art and religious fanaticism ideas and just gibberish and half truths and kind of spelling out the whole thing. It's kind of remarkable that they these ideas that they came up through this artistry, they really kept in their imagery and their lyrics and their identity all the way till now.
I just realized something. I did not go to art school or film school, but in a sense, I did through proxy, as Devo was my proxy, and Devo went to college for me.
Amazing.
That's where I was schooled.
Well, there's a great line after Satisfaction. General Boy's talking again, and they show this woman painting in a beret and a smock, and then there's a bar band playing in the background.
Yeah.
And General Boy goes, artists and performers are usually good-looking guys and gals who couldn't hold a real job. Entertainment is sometimes the excuse by which these perpetuate their selfish hoax. I ask all of you to join Devo's efforts to correct this situation from the inside out. It has never appeared in anything else except this videotape, but I love that 17 seconds of just like them putting their finger on art and music.
I remember by the late 80s, finally actually getting to meet the band and hang out with them and go out to eat with them and go to Mark Mothersbaugh's house. And I remember Mark saying it to me at the time in those short words that artists are just nice people that can't hold down real jobs. And I'm just like, yep, you got me. You got me. Sort of repurposing what no doubt he wrote for his dad to say in that film.
Yeah.
What a sad world it would have been without that. I mean, even with all the great music that exists, it still would have been less without Devo's vision and what they did.
To make a Time Life video cassette of a 55-minute part live performance, but mostly music videos and special weird little setups and theatrical scenes that they're doing through is, I just don't know. I'd never heard of anyone else doing something that ambitious.
I wonder how they got hooked in with Time Life. That seems like a strange marriage at that time. But Warner Brothers made it happen?
Yeah, it's part of Time Life was part of Warner Brothers.
Okay.
And so, but the fact of them basically being like, hey, we can make content for you. It's music. And they're probably like, great, we need this is a new industry. We need stuff. We need content. But for them to deliver this thing, which is such a slap in the face of the people who are putting it out, I think is incredible. They're so fearless in terms of being like, yeah, we don't like you, and we know you don't get us, and you think that we're this joke band in these yellow outfits, and you see dollar signs when we're not doing that. And I like that it's just such a great middle finger to a major label corporation while still using it. And in a funny way, you mentioned Kurt Cobain, and I feel like Kurt kind of used the same thing. He tried to basically be like, we're part of this thing, but it's a total middle finger to it too. And we are going to be disruptors, and we're going to do things our own way. And I hate it, but it's part of what I am,
And then there's some people that would try to say Devo weren't a punk band or Nirvana aren't a punk band.
Right.
Totally missing all of this.
Yeah. They obviously never saw Nirvana in a club, like destroying, right. Like they were very punk,
I'm so bored with that whole conversation, but like, yeah, I still have to hear it. What is and what isn't punk? There's nothing more punk rock than Devo. Let's just leave it at that and move on.
That sounds great.
How far have we gotten into this discussion?
We're pretty close now that we're into Secret Agent Man.
Secret Agent Man. Okay, yeah, we've got the band. Looks like they're trying to rehearse, right? They're at their studio, which looks to be this industrial setting. Some old could have been like a power plant or something. Who knows what it was? And they're wearing like worker overalls, obviously like real actual workers' overalls, not anything they made, but like went down to the Army surplus store and purchased.
Totally industrial wear.
But they're offsetting it by wearing these frightening clear plastic face masks that distort their faces underneath it and conform their faces to these kind of horrifying masks.
They're really
masks.
upsetting.
Yeah, and again, the masks. What is it about a mask that I don't know? I mean, in the 70s, masks seemed to be a really big part of Halloween. No, Halloween these days, we don't really. It's a different world. We really don't see these masks anymore than the way that we did in the 20th century for some reason.
Sure, the plastic foam.
Right.
Yeah.
The cheap masks that you could buy at the dime store that were plastic face or whatever. But then some of these more just, they got them from weirder sources than the dime store. Who knows? But
yeah, there was that stuff you could get in the back of like Famous Monster magazine where it'd be like melting face. And it would be like $1.29, and then you'd get it, and it would be nothing like the picture and be even weirder. It seems like they had a really amazing collection of rubber masks and like kind of plastic hard masks.
Yeah, there's a picture in my new book that I included from our very same trip to the Grand Canyon to work on Steve's film back in '89. And it's a picture of Steve Doughton and Steve Horton, and they're wearing these frightening masks that were actually made from photographs of people's faces, sort of like almost like what Leatherface did, where it's like superimposing a face on a face. And I just, yeah,
amazing.
I just thought I would throw that out there.
Yeah, congrats on the book and the exhibition. I'll put in the show notes, I'll put links to all of where people can get all your stuff too.
It was very satisfying to produce this book because I got to pull stuff from almost 50 years of work. Here's the photo I'm talking about. You can cut this out of the show because this is visual.
No, I totally remember that.
Yeah.
That was an amazing trip.
And that's totally Devo inspired.
Absolutely. Yeah. We would drive around with those masks on.
And Steve and I's friendship was so much based in Devo too, I think.
Yeah, I remember going to see when they reformed in '88 or whatever. We went together. We all went together to see them. And we were wearing those masks in the audience. And I remember Bob one playing guitar and looking out. And then he just smiled and pointed like, oh, weirdos. Like we were sweating so much having to wear that from getting to the show till before it went on to when they went on. It was like we were a mess.
That's commitment.
Yes. It's true. No one else dressed up for it. And I remember Greg Gallant, the person I played music with, had made a lab coat that said puke punk on each sleeve in green letters. And you just made your own shit. And you went to a Devo show. You know.
Yeah, that's, there's just something about that era of, I don't know, late 70s where to me, it's just, in a sense, there's so much innocence there, especially a young teenager picking up on this notion of punk. And it's just like, before anyone really knows what is up, like there's just something really, I don't know, maybe because I relate to it so much through my own story that I don't know. You look at a movie like Dennis Hopper's 1980 film Out of the Blue.
Sure.
It depicts that very well.
Right. And so when you heard the different version of Secret Agent Man that was on this thing, it's radically different than the Duty Now for the Future.
Definitely record like a home studio recording versus probably a 4-track, right?
Yes.
Probably maybe even a cassette recording. Who knows what they were using to record their stuff, but certainly not Ken Scott,
No, Bob Mother's Bob 1 is singing it. Got some really great cutaways, like you mentioned before, the kind of disco guy dancing with the weird mask and them paddling somebody with another weird mask, like monkeys paddling something.
Yeah, monkeys spanking an overweight woman who's also wearing a mask. I think we see Kennedy at the end of it, right?
Kennedy's at the very end, but on the paddles, I think
Yeah.
it's Nixon.
Okay. And we see but Boogie Boy's in a mask is in the video too.
Yeah,
We
playing
see Boogie
synthesizer.
appear. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's some great stuff where they show like kind of a rock star guy playing like a multi-necked guitar, like, well, flash photography is going off around him. These weird little cutaways. Again, Chuck Statler was so good. He'd be like, we'll put up an orange colored cardboard backdrop and we're going to shoot in front of it with really flat lighting. Okay, we got that. Now we're going to put a purple backdrop of cardboard behind it, and we're going to use the same lighting, and we're going to do these cutaways. That's the thing that I really took away from Chuck's work, is his use of color. Really strange cutaways that aren't part of the song, that aren't part of the band.
Right. It's amazing because there was nothing to compare it to at the time. There was no music videos. There was
Right.
no such thing. In a way, he pioneered the whole format.
He now is comfortable enough to say, I'm the godfather of the music video, because he was doing all that stuff for stiff records like Elvis Costello and Rockpile and Madness, later did the Cars and the Time, when MTV first came around. But these things were being made, and there was nowhere for them to be shown. What do you do with a 1979 Madness video? Like, what do you do, with One Step Beyond? It's not going to be played on American television. It might be played once in the UK.
In the middle of the night, yeah.
The fact that these labels, these little independent labels early on were like, let's make a bunch of these.
Right.
We don't know what we're going to do with them yet. And the fact that, Chuck ended up making 8 or 9 Elvis Costello videos, and could make Elvis Costello never look bored in his videos it's kind of incredible. Like Elvis Costello, he just always seemed with Chuck to really be alive in his videos. Chuck, I think, brought something out of him where he'd be like, all right, we're going to stop here. You go in this field, lip sync and run towards me. All right, now we're going to go in this hallway, the hotel hallway. Now you're going to fall down here. Now we're going to... You have to have a comfortable enough relationship with someone that they trust you to know that they're going to deliver, but also when you're in a band, you also have to be like, okay, I'll do whatever you say. You have to kind of trust someone. And I think Chuck got great performances out of people, as well as non-actors, musicians and non-actors.
I think that leads us to the Comeback Johnny video, which is the last music video that appears on this thing. And famously enough, this was filmed at the Roxy on the Sunset Strip.
Oh, okay.
And populated by the LA punk scene at the time, including Darby Crash. You can see him.
Okay.
I don't even think he was Darby Crash, and I think he was still Bobby Pin. Helen Keller, Bill Bartell.
Wow.
Who is someone that I'm presently working on a documentary film about.
Oh, you're doing a White Flag?
It's Bill's story.
Amazing.
It's not a White Flag documentary, but it's about Bill Bartell. But White Flag's part of the story.
That's incredible. I'm really excited about that, Dave.
Been working on that for a couple of years already. Who knows when we'll be done with it. But Howie Pyro was also in the music video, and that's where like Bill and Howie first met.
Wow.
Rest in peace, both of them.
Yeah. Amazing. So was it like an open call? Like, we're going to be doing this video? And
yeah, it was just like, come on down and be in a Devo video.
That's amazing. I didn't know that was shot in LA.
Again, just about a year or two before my time of coming out of the scene, but or else I would have been there. But in 1978 or 79 when this was filmed, I would have had no way to get there. And it's the same place where they filmed Rock and Roll High School, and also Darby Crash is quite prominent in that as well. So he was like being a punk extra really early on.
It's a rare Devo look that they only wear in this video, which I think they look great in, which is this cowboy, black outfit cowboy look is pretty awesome. They look great in it.
Again, every song, every music video, they had to have a different getup.
Yeah,
it was about outfitting it, for the track. And the cowboy thing Who would have guessed it would have worked with Devo?
Yeah, and they cut to these three elderly cowboy gentlemen bowling is like kind of the cutaway in it. But it's basically a live performance video, which they really didn't have one up to that point.
Trying to capture the energy of their live show, which was like
Incredible.
the thing that they really had going at the time. So I could see, I could see why they would do that.
It captures it so well.
Maybe even the label encouraged them, said, we've got to get you, we got to do something that's got to try to get the live energy of your performances.
It is an amazing performance. Like Mark, crawls out into the audience and gets just like devoured. It's so sweaty, so hyper, so energized. Sometimes, I mean, you've made videos for a lot of bands. It's sometimes hard to get that energy across. You're like, oh, I want you to feel what I'm feeling.
Yeah, you can only really get it in a real setting of being live. Some music videos I actually did that technique where I had the band playing live, even though they were lip syncing to the track. Like, for example, for a Fire Hose video that I shot, I had them playing in a club, and they kept playing the song over and over again. It was a cover of Wire's Mannequin,
right?
And but that's how I shot that thing, and that's the same thing that Devo did with Come Back Johnny.
Yeah, I love Come Back Johnny. It's one of my favorite songs, and again, when I was younger, hearing it was upsetting because it's just like car crash, and like it's just them turning the like rock and roll 50s tragedy rock and roll track on its head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the day the music died.
Yeah.
Bye bye, Miss American Pie. Yeah.
A little faster.
Devo's music is the antithesis of I don't know, that whole 70s James Taylor sound. We got to talk about Alan Myers, and his drumming to me made the band work on every level. And
agreed.
What an incredible drummer! What an inventive drummer! What an insanely hard hitting drummer! If you look at some of the live video clips that are out there, you'll see crazy. And like I'm a drummer myself. Well, I became a drummer in '81 because my band needed a drummer. And I forever tried to figure out Alan Myers' drum parts, and being self-taught and not even being schooled in music, I had a bit of a curve to get over, but I could never figure out like the drum part for Satisfaction.
Oh my gosh.
And funny enough, when I was out on the road with Nirvana, one of the first things that Dave Grohl does, he sits down at his drums during sound check, and he plays the fucking pattern for Satisfaction, the Alan Myers drum pattern. I was just like, there you go. For the life of me, that's like, rubbing your belly and patting your head and switching it.
Totally.
It's just like you have to have two minds working at the same time.
Yeah.
It's even more than different than having like independence of movement of limbs and timing and so forth.
Oh, he's incredible.
Just wow.
Yeah. The fact that, you listen to the Hardcore Devo stuff that they were doing when they were in college before they met Alan. And it's very sludgy and slow and very fascinating and complicated in its own way. It's like they meet Alan and all of a sudden they're just up the speed. They're like a real band, and they're tight for the first time. And they can rely on him to do these incredible patterns that allow them to really, bring the musical language to Devo into a much clearer focus.
Yeah, he's not playing the drum parts of anyone that was a drummer before him. He's not.
Totally.
He's laying down something that's completely different and unique, which makes Devo's music different and unique as well. In addition to, the songwriting, it's just the musicality that is there. There's no denying that. No doubt.
Yeah, he was amazing. And the minute that he started playing less of a role, like around New Traditionalist, he was just playing these electronic drums that were doing a lot of trigger work, right?
Right. Funny enough, the early Devo was all electronic drums. So
Yeah, totally.
yeah,
I could feel myself pulling away in interest a little. And I didn't even think about it till now that how much I think Alan's just the propulsiveness, the energy
yeah,
of it, the inventiveness of it. Because when I heard Devo's Satisfaction, I had never heard the Rolling Stones version in my life to that
really,
point. So
wow,
when I heard the Stones version, like a year or two later, it was completely foreign to me because to me, I knew it was a cover, but I
wow.
didn't know that it was not the same song, really, right? It's not based in it. And so for me, I was like, whoa. Like, and the only other time in my life that happened was hearing the Residents do Papa's Got a Brand New Bag before I heard James Brown's version because it just wasn't being played.
The Residents also did
Yeah,
Satisfaction,
exactly. A really upsetting version.
a very different version of it too,
Yeah, it's
but
incredible.
great.
Yeah. It's fascinating to hear you as a drummer talk about Alan because every song, again, like them reinventing the wheel for each song in terms of the movement and the style and what they're going to do. Alan never played the same thing twice on a track. Every song, in terms of the drum pattern and the idea, is
Mhm.
completely like we're racing the board and I'm going to do something completely different with it. And I think that's so impressive.
It's conceptual too. It's. I can't relate it to any other drummer.
No, me either. No, he is incredible. And I guess later in his life, he was like a home electrician and was doing that wiring and stuff like that.
That's always good. Yeah.
Then we get to there's this little sequence after Come Back Johnny where Cowboy goes wahoo wahoo with a robot synthesizer voice over it, which again I loved. I just thought it was so funny.
I think they just took the word Yahoo, like Yahoo, and put it backwards. Yeah, it's just
That's probably
flew
right.
back like the human voice backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they have that great sequence of little babies drooling while they say, "Are we not men? We are Devo."
Just think, all those babies in that video are now, you know, pushing their mid late 50s.
Yeah, they're probably all hedge fund managers or something really evil. But I wanted to talk what your experience was with seeing Mark come out as Boogie Boy at the end of that first show you saw. Like, what was your visceral? It's a total pushback on the audience. If you have no context of what that is or the story,
I was aware of Boogie Boy before I saw him live. I'd seen photos, so it wasn't like a shock or anything. And I realized that it was, I knew right away that it was Mark in a mask.
right?
But again, it's just part of the show. The show's coming down. The show's winding down when they bring out Boogie Boy.
Yeah.
He's bringing it to its conclusion.
And sometimes he'd do a ballad, Words Get Stuck in My Throat, which you could get on a lot of
Right.
bootlegs. It was just like a really lovely thing. But then he'd have like a coughing fit for like a minute and a half, you know?
Yeah.
That's the words are stuck in his throat, It's like they couldn't even do the ballad thing.
I think they got the idea for covering that song around the time that they were filming Human Highway
Okay.
because Dean Stockwell's involvement in that, and somehow I think maybe they happened to, or not Dean Stockwell, sorry, Russ Tamblyn,
Sure.
both who of which worked with David Lynch.
Yes.
There you
Dr.
go.
Jacoby.
Yeah. Again, maybe no mistake they're involved, but I think that like during the making of that, like in that era, I know it started showing up in their live sets around that time.
Okay.
So it would make sense that that came together through their time working on Neil Young's Human Highway.
And then they end the concert thing with Boogie Boy saying, "Oh, we're all Devo. We're all Devo." They have the credit sequence with these little things with Mark being like, "They got those recombinant DNA labs. They're putting donkey heads on man's bodies. They can do that now. They can do that." My favorite saying in the whole thing, though, is Mark goes, "You try to get the corner seat in the restaurants, but you can't always get them." And then that's it. That's the end of Devo talking.
What you just said about trying to get the corner seat in the restaurant, that shows up in the lyric of Turnaround.
Oh, yeah.
And funny enough, Cobain gets the words wrong because I guess when Nirvana did their cover of that song, there was no internet around to look up lyrics. So Cobain hears it as, you go for that crazy sounding restaurant. But what the actual lyric is you go sit in that corner seat in the restaurant. They're going to try to get behind you. Don't let them do it.
That's right. They have a talking part in it. That's right. That's
Yeah,
absolutely.
right.
I've never thought about that. Right.
Yeah, and so again, they use all of their isms and they reuse them,
Right.
and they appear later, and they come back. Like thematically, they were sort of reusing this stuff, and of course, you'd have to be a total super fan to even notice any of this stuff. But here comes out my Devo nerdiness. I can't help it.
Me
But
too.
I mean, there's a lot to be nerdy about. I
Yeah.
mean,
They were obsessed with advertising and slogans and
right.
political campaigns and and that leads into the final thing, which is the Devo corporate anthem, which is the first track on the Duty Now for the Future, an instrumental track. And if you haven't seen the video, it's great. It's just basically Devo standing in unison with wind blowing through their hair while they're wearing their Duty Now for the Future leisure wear at the time with these bubble-eyed glasses on. And then when the song hits the middle and there's a cymbal, they just raise their hand into salute. And I believe they would play this at the end of the concerts too, to kind of be like, this is the farewell.
The national anthem. It was like they're declaring their band as a country, and they're showing their patriotism to Devolution.
But I love that it's a corporate anthem. They're like, it's the Devo corporate anthem, not the Devo anthem, not the new song for Devo. It's like,
because it's being released on Warner Brothers. Of course, it's corporate.
Yeah, and they loved playing into that. They're like, we are a corporation. We're Club Devo. It's a really fun world that they created.
It's all conceptual now.
Yeah.
It's just the concepts have concepts. I went and I reviewed a bunch of music videos that are actually a part of this complete truth about Devolution, which was really the redoing of Men Who Make the Music. It contains so much of the same material. There's this sequence with Rod Reuter and Donut Reuter. Donut Reuter being Lorraine Newman, who was romantically involved with Mark Mothersbaugh at the time, and just so happened to be a neighbor to my friend's father, my friend being Joe Cole and his father being actor Dennis Cole. And that's how I first got to meet Mark and Devo at the time. But anyways, there's this scene where Rod Reuter is talking to Donut, who comes in begging to hear some Devo and see some Devo. And of course, Rod's just like, you don't want to hear that garbage. Here, take a look at this. It's the lead singer of my mega metal band, the Evil Clowns. And it cuts to a photo of David Lee Roth, obviously taking a stab at Van Halen, their label mates and major competition over there at Warner's. So, but the thing is, Donut responds, looking at the picture of David Lee Roth, turns her nose up and goes, El Vomito. So great.
Yes, it's amazing. Especially like, again, you couldn't escape Van Halen.
No, you could not escape Van Halen, and they were like the band for the moment for the late 70s in Southern California culture. The Van Halen fans that I watched that Devo with on Saturday Night Live were totally threatened by Devo and hated them. And, this is why these through lines work.
Yes.
This is why, you got someone taking a stab at someone like, David Lee Roth is great. Van Halen is great. Don't get me wrong. I have an appreciation for them, but they certainly were not important to me in the way that Devo was informing me at such an early age.
Yeah. Well, and as much as you might think like maybe the members of Van Halen would have liked something like Devo, a lot of their fans did not.
Well, yeah, there was just culture war right there.
Totally.
It was just like, this was the enemy. Like,
Yes,
they were the enemy, and they viewed us as the enemy. And it was,
absolutely. People were scared of what this music represented.
and the media was so scared. People were scared because the media was telling them to be afraid, and the media was putting out these sensationalistic reports, and of course, totally missing the mark and not getting it, but spreading disinformation. I see so much of that today. It's all Devo, all Devo, weird, all Devo.
Yes. Well, I think it's been a common thread from talking to people that there's something that about discovering something that is a ground zero moment for you.
Right. That's why when you asked me what I wanted to do, I mean, I just know there's a lot of stuff to talk about here. So
They were, again, multimedia oriented. And for somebody like myself who worked, at a media arts center and then made music videos and then also was a musician and then opened a video store for 22 years, there's something about their aesthetic and the way that they had this perverse little rascals mentality of like, let's scrape together a few bucks and make a video. Let's do this. Let's call our friends in and do it. I see the direct through line from their work to your work and your influence in my life and Steve Downton's life and other people. And I just so excited that I've got to talk to you.
I think this is the first time ever that I've discussed this. I feel like I'm now out of the Devo closet.
That's amazing, Dave. That's so great.
There you go.
At the end of every interview, I ask the same question, but I tailor it depending on the subject. So on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest, how many bubble-eyed dog boys down in the valley do you give Devo's video and film work?
I give them 10 out of 10 bubble-eyed dog boys. Plus 2 thumbs up.
Yes.
From the dead Siskel and Ebert from beyond the grave.
Dave, I am so touched to talk to you about this. Devo has made such an imprint in us in terms of how we look at humor and parody and film and music, and inspired us, and was also a shield in terms of like identity. Like, we are Devo.
Mm-hmm.
It changed my life. It's been really fun to talk to somebody who it also changed their life. Big fan of everything you've done. I'm so excited about this Bill documentary.
We're starting to work on a teaser trailer, so hopefully we'll get that out soon.
We'll put links to all of your work and the new book and everything. But so good to see you after all these years. Thanks again, and duty now for the future, sir.
There you go.
Thank you for listening to Revolutions Per Movie. We release new episodes every Thursday, and if you've enjoyed this, it would mean a lot to me if you would rate and review it on your favorite podcast app. The show is a completely independent affair, so the best way to support the show is through our Patreon at patreon.com/revolutionspermovie, where you can get weekly bonus episodes and exclusive goods sent to you just for joining. You can also follow us on social media at Revolutions Per Movie and find out more information about our various guests in the episode show notes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Bye!